Hey, Brent, good morning. This is our ninth episode, I guess, of the GNUSpective podcast and AMA. So, welcome, my friend.
Yeah,
I
good
don't
morning,
have
Ken.
a lot
Good to
of
see your
agenda
face.
today. I guess there is a couple kind of funny stories, but why don't I start off with that? Because something happened to me this morning, and I posted it on X, but you and I have always talked about this kind of are we in a simulation and metaverses and all that, but this kind of blows me away, really. Um, Basically, what it is that last night I went to a founders and funders thing in Palo Alto, and I was talking, and I got to know this one guy immediately because we were both signing our name badges at the same time, trying to figure that out. And we got to talking, really cool guy, not technical, which is good for me because I was explaining stuff to him, and he is in the tech space, but he's more on the marketing and stuff. Anyway, we got to talking later in the evening about travel. That I want to live forever, or at least till I'm 120. And I was joking that I threaten my kids and my wife with that, but I said, don't worry, because, by the time I'm 90, we'll be traveling off to other, universes and space and stuff like that. And he's like, well, yeah, but there's, the speed of light factor thing, are you going to buy a ticket to Mars, for instance? I said, no, 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 I have no interest in that, in general propulsion systems. I'm waiting until we can bend space time, which is proven that it can actually, or not proven, but theoretically possible to bend space time so you can travel faster than the speed of light. So I'm waiting for that technology to come about because I don't want to sit around and, spend 4 months going to Mars on a propulsion system and, one way ticket. It's like, no, 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 thanks. Anyway,
Yeah, you're waiting for the spacing guild and the folding of space,
yeah, the
Mister
folding of space
Dude.
and stuff like that, to
Yeah.
create wormholes and all that kind of stuff. And so I wake up this morning and I swear to God, Grok or somebody's listening to me because on X this morning, there was a post about how in a lab they've been able to travel faster than speed of light with bending kind of in the space time bubble thing. And they've done it in the lab. And I'm like, man, it's like somebody listening to me. Is Grok listening to me, or something? It was crazy because we were in this room, I didn't have my phone on. We had a bunch of people in there, probably 100 people in the room, and I'm talking to this guy, and I'm like, either his phone's listening or my phone's listening, and it shows up on my X feed. That's kind of crazy. And then another one popped up like 5 minutes later, and this guy who hadn't published his theory yet gives all these links on the possibilities and saying that I believe some lab is going to be able to do this. And he hasn't published the paper, but somebody puts on there, oh, here's an unpublished paper on Substack that you can read. And I go read it, and it's all about bending space time and traveling faster than the speed of light. And I'm like, well, this is kind of crazy. But anyway, it kind of, it makes me think that we are definitely in a simulation, or at least, Grok and or Amazon, what is that? Alexa is freaking listening to me. And we've had other experiences like that where we'll be talking about something at home and all of a sudden it'll show up as, hey, you should buy this thing on Amazon. So I really think, we have Alexa in our house. And so I really think, I have no uh, evidence, pure evidence of it, but just anecdotally, it seems like they're freaking listening in on us. But
Oh, that's the anecdotes. Boy, they go endlessly. I remember that I had a razor, electric razor for shaving, and I was nearby my phone and et cetera. And I'm shaving, and the battery starts to die. He's like, the little motor, and then within like 20 minutes, I'm getting commercials, ads, and such for Norelco razors and such. And I'm like, that was just the sound effect of a razor. That's all that was.
yeah.
I'm like, oh. And the thing is, you say, oh, well, yeah, but you were always getting those ads, and you had you were noticing those ads before. Okay, I understand there is such a phenomenon as that, and that could be the attribution. But I'm just going to make my own attestation. No, I was not receiving ads for razors in the previous hours, days, weeks, months. It just suddenly popped up at that moment, and that's just one of way too many examples that have occurred. Now, That to me, I wouldn't call that synchronicity. I would just simply call that technology.
Yeah, spying.
Um, but
Yeah.
um, but synchronicity is a topic I'm interested in, and perhaps I think you threaten sometimes, Ken, that you would want to make a podcast where we could talk about just things like that.
Yeah.
I would be
Well,
all for it. But
that's not this podcast, but I do understand that, like, when I'm searching for stuff, like I was searching for a robot vacuum, and I bought one, and then all of a sudden these ads are popping up because I bought it on Amazon or I'm searching for it on Google. I know that they track that stuff for sure. And that doesn't bother me because it's like, fine, I'm looking for something. If you find something good and has an advertisement, that's all great. But in general, yeah, let's kind of move on from that topic, and let's talk about Genius a little bit. I mean, I'm sure everybody's kind of waiting for that. I'm gonna, if you have any Q&A questions, post them in the chat, and we'll get to those, and we'll curate those. My guy Paul, who's sitting on here too, will actually kind of curate that. I'm gonna hide that for now. We'll post it back up and halfway through so that you guys can get a reminder to post the questions there in the Q&A. But on the project side of things, we just so I have another guy that I hired part time out of Bulgaria to kind of help on the bridging stuff, and he just finished the base library for the bridging. And what this is our version of the bridging where there is security in there for using ZK snarks, so that when you roll up or you roll out of our Super Genius blockchain, it's very secure between different EVMs or Ethereum and Polygon and stuff like that. And he finished up all that in the tests and things like that. And now we're integrating it into the SDK, the software development kit. So it'll be added to the wallet soon enough. It is still going to be gated, but that's kind of irrelevant. That means that we'll have bridges, but on very big transactions, we'll have to check them first before they go through. But that's kind of our, as soon as we get that and the last bits of, we went testnet phase 3.4 and 3.4.1 recently. And so now we're just, we'll probably have one more testnet phase in a couple weeks where we're working on a few fixes and things like that for security, but everything's going along pretty well. And so after 3.5, beta testnet beta phase 3.5, then if that's pretty solid and everything's working correctly, then we can go to mainnet phase 1, which will have all the bridging in there. You'll be able to do some. We may upgrade mainnet with the AI stuff because we're adding more AI inference capabilities and generic inference capabilities. And we have in process a bunch of different apps and applications and stuff like that. So we're using the SDK, right now behind a wallet and behind a game. We have more games that want to come on board, and it shouldn't take them more than about 5 minutes to integrate. When we launch on mainnet, if we're going to start reaching out after beta phase 3.5, it only takes us a day to reach out to all those developers and go, okay, integrate, and then mainnet's going to launch in a couple weeks. So it's not like we haven't been sitting on our thumbs and not doing anything about this, but we're just waiting until we verify 3.5 is good and they've all beta tested it, or we've had our beta testers. But we have several other applications coming out, including something we're calling Chat Genius, and either Stream Genius, and I posted kind of the name on there, and several other applications that we can white label or launch ourselves as a Genius application fairly quickly, because they're already like open source products that work, and the only thing we have to do is embed our SDK in it, so that, and take out other monetization things like annoying ads and things like that. And so we're just taking existing applications or existing UIs and kind of retrofitting them with Genius SDK to make like a Chat Genius, where that may take a little bit longer because we have our own way of doing models and stuff like that we're working on, and that'll take a couple weeks. But I believe that should be launched in January, where you can pay $5 a year for unlimited tokens in the chat over, and it'll be just as good as Chat GPT or Grok and stuff like that, because we're actually going to be using some of their models as teachers for our own models. So in general, I think that's pretty cool because we can make. We did an analysis on that $5 a year, not $20 a month, $5 a year for unlimited tokens, right? And they have limits on ChatGPT and stuff like that. Using our ecosystem, we'll still be probably 60% profitable on that, and the other 40% is doled out to the nodes that are in the network for doing the inference for the chat LLMs. And I know that's a lot, but we have all these. Our business development team, they should start posting on Telegram soon. They have their own channel there to kind of give you updates about what's going on. And we're talking with tons of musicians and stuff like that for Stream Genius or Genius Streaming, whatever it's going to be called, or Genius Tube, that are very excited about the possibilities that we're giving them, because only about 1% of the music artists make money. And what we're doing is we're turning that on its head and we're taking out the middleman. And the reason only 1% make money is because you have distributors, you have Spotify taking a piece, everybody's taking a piece. And so they end up with like 25% or less. I've heard 15% of the take. So, if you're on Spotify, they pay like maybe double what Genius does, but after the artist and or the middleman take stuff out, you're getting like 15% of that. So when we launch the Genius Tube or the Genius streaming application, artists can create their own token, which is a child token of Genius, and they'll get paid directly in their own token while people are listening to their music. And so I've designed this whole product, and there's a product called DTube that is basically 99% of what we need, and it's open source. And so we're going to kind of, modify the UI and then use most of what they have and integrate our Genius SDK in there in order to do this. And that shouldn't take more than 2 to 3 weeks to basically get that up and running. And so this is what I mean by we're really starting to realize that this is not a DPIN, a traditional decentralized physical infrastructure. It is more of an operating system. And yeah, it can do AI underneath, and it can do, but it can do rendering, rendering frames for a live action movie and stuff like that. But it can also, what it is a combination of GPU access and payment channel or payment processing, which is kind of what the patent is. But it really turns in, because we have all these repos and everything. It is like I don't want to call it an AI OS, really. It's a GPU OS is what it really is, because you can do rendering, and AI is kind of one of the things you can do on it. So I guess really what we should maybe label it is like a GPU mesh OS, because that's what it is, really, if you think about it. Because it's beyond just doing AI. It also does peer-to-peer storage over IPFS. We have all that stuff built in. And so I think we need to kind of rebrand with, that we're not a DPIN, because, you have render and you have tau, and they're all DPINs, and we're part DPIN, but we're way beyond that in terms of what we do. So I'm going to pause there and let you, take a breath, Brent. I'm just kind of excited about everything. Kind of my new take on really what we should push that we are, because you can do so many things on this. It's like having Windows, and you can quickly write an app on our OS and then have monetization and blockchain built in underneath it. And so it's this kind of new layer on top of every other OS that adds functionality to another OS, really. And so it's pretty cool. I hope that Apple. I said I was going to take a breath, but I do have a vision that Apple or Android may eventually embed this into their system like another library, so it will actually be part of like iOS, OS system or Android OS. I don't see any reason they shouldn't do this, but it's just a matter of, we have to make sure we launch and everybody sees what's going on and how quickly you can make apps that take out ads and things like that. So I'm going to pause because I'm so excited about my new kind of I don't know thinking and about our complete OS and our complete ecosystem. So
Well, on the tails of that, this is driving me nuts because what I'm attempting to conjure is the name of the open source like hypervisor system that has a kind of a similar mentality, but it's not at all at our scale. It's really meant for taking hardware that you already have that's in a given building, and leveraging that where you take disparate pieces of hardware and you make an OS out of that. And there's a
are
name
you
for that
talking
open source.
Docker?
What's that?
Is it Docker?
Oh goodness, no, not Docker. It's
Uh,
it's an overall hypervisor, but it is not at all intended to operate at the scale at what we are operating. And I just now I'm asking questions, just googling it, and it's Google's not producing that. It's driving me nuts. But
oh, you should be using Grok. Google's terrible.
okay, you know what? Yeah, here goes. I'll go visit Grok, but I'll keep on just simply noting that that is, I think, certainly a better way to capture this when you say not a traditional DPIN. And I suppose, yeah, that makes sense because if it's more of an OS, then using the language DPIN, it's like, well, you're not wrong, but that's a little bit more vertical than what we're really dealing with here. Which, by the way, that is, it kind of takes the whole premise of blockchain, even of like state machines, contracts. It even takes that to another level because smart contracts are supposed to be a general purpose, but this takes that general purposeness to a whole new level. So this is really quite extraordinary in terms of there you go again, Ken, pushing the boundaries. You always got to be the disruptor. I guess you're just being in character. I'll leave you at that.
I'm such an asshole.
Yeah, would you stop the doggone disruption?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that's what, everybody else is saying, like Amazon Web Services and everybody else, because I didn't really intend to disrupt everything, but just every time I look at our system and the way I built it, I'm like, oh my God, this is going to disrupt this industry. This is going to disrupt this industry. I mean, I have a new guy that's come on board for free that's really excited about, and he has contacts in the music industry, and he's getting me in front of some pretty big names, or at least that's what he's saying. And he's local, and I trust him. He kind of came on board, is doing everything for free because he's excited. He's been talking to me for like 6 months. In fact, he was, his name's Sergio. He was at the Game Developers Conference last year, came to kind of check out what we were doing. And finally, he wanted to do his own coin. And, he kept pushing me to do that. And I said, no, I don't think, he wanted to do a stable coin and all that. And he started talking to Genius. And the more he learned about crypto and everything, he dropped his token. He's like, I don't need that anymore. I'm going to go on Genius. I'm going to help you because I understand how you can disrupt the music industry. What we do is we take out the middleman for everything with this decentralized GPU mesh OS, what would that be? Decentralized mesh. No, it doesn't work. We need some acronym. For all you
Stop! You're
out
gonna
there,
hurt yourself.
with an acronym for us instead of DPIN, we're a hyper DPIN or something, or a genius DPIN, or I don't know what to call it. Since we have Genius AI stands for globally networked ultra smart AI. Maybe we can do globally networked ultra smart DPIN, the Genius DPIN or something, OS. Or I don't like the word DPIN because one other thing we should talk about, and maybe kind of a fun thing for people, is we're not a physical infrastructure, really. Well, I guess we are because we're leveraging your devices, but we're kind of a metaphysical. I don't know if it's metaphysical devices because we're all software. We're a software mesh system that does go on your device. And I guess that does make it a decentralized physical infrastructure based on installing our software. But it's kind of a misnomer because a physical infrastructure normally, I guess DPINs are that, they have their GPUs and their systems that join this mesh network. So I guess it's not a misnomer, but it just bugs me that we're more not physical, but we are, something different, right? And so it's
Well, it's too bad that the word metaphysical has already been taken and is spoken for, because otherwise I would say jump on it. Yes, metaphysical.
no, but then
Um,
the problem is then people will think, oh, you work for Meta.
okay, yeah. There's layers of problems on that designation. Incidentally, going backwards, I believe that the name I was looking for is OpenStack.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, OpenStack, yeah.
so
Yep, yep, for sure. Um, yeah, cool. Anyway, so I kind of jabbered a lot about, kind of what's going on. I mean, do you have any, let's see, you were
well,
talking like AI stuff. And so the chat LLM, will probably have all the categories that normally have, plus some extended ones. And so what we're doing instead of so there's this thing called mixture of experts, which doesn't really work fully on what we're doing because they have 57 layers, and so that requires each layer to be executed first before the next layer is going on. And that takes a lot of time. So if you're at 200 milliseconds per layer, it takes 11 seconds to go through all those layers. And so that's one of the reasons that high end GPUs can execute that quickly because they have interconnects that are really fast in order to talk with different experts and stuff like that. But our system that we're developing is um, they kind of wanted to label it mixture of agents, but it's more than that. It's really mixture of what do they call it? Mixture of not mixture of experts, mixture of professionals or subject matter experts
mhm.
instead of just mixture of experts. And what it does is it breaks down the models into sub models of like you're an expert in boats, you're an expert in so it refines the expert mixture of experts instead of just being a generalist or having a reasoning expert or this kind of expert, more into not what do you call that, subject matter experts, but there's a term in programming when you have generalists and specialists. So specialists kind of thing. So it's really a mixture of specialists than a mixture of experts because the specialist denotes or connotes that they are a specialist in a certain category, where a mixture of experts is like a generalist term that you're an expert in general terms, you're an expert in reasoning, or you're an expert in this, but it doesn't break it down into experts of a certain category. And so we're expanding it because what that allows us to do is reduce the model size that is stored, and then they talk to each other. And so instead of 57 layers, there's only going to be 2 layers. And so that means you can get a token within 200 milliseconds because you get your token set and you do your specialist analysis on your model, and then he talks to the other expert does it at the same time. So that's 200 milliseconds, and they roll back up to you and you weight them, and then basically that gets your token for your next token. And maybe it takes more experts than that, but they all act parallelly. And so it'd be like, okay, I need a boat expert, or let's do cars. I need a car expert that's an expert in Ford, and I need him to be an expert in engines, and I need him to be an expert in the oil that is used that's the most efficient for that particular Ford model. So you can see you can get 4 experts. One's an expert in oil for different cars, one's an expert in Ford stuff, one's an expert in engines. And so they can all say, hey, our data shows that this is the best oil to use, and it comes out and it comes up to the LLM instead of the mixture of experts having, well, I know about Fords and Chevys and every other car thing, and I know about engines and I know about oil, and so I'm a car expert, but I have every data set that you can imagine. And so imagine trying to put that on a phone when you have millions of parameters for that particular model. So we're working on an abstraction layer to extract data, or an extraction layer and an abstraction layer to extract the model data from some of the ones to actually be teachers to our own models, saying, okay, we're going to build, this category of experts or the specialists that we're going to train on. And it doesn't take very much training. I did an analysis, and it takes like buying an H100 for 1 day, basically, to do this in something called LoRa. And I know this is a lot and kind of technical, but I'm just really excited about it because it seems to be kind of leveraging frontier models, but building a subset of from the frontier models to have them teach these other models how to answer the questions. And so it's like the trainer training new trainers type of thing. And so it's pretty cool. And it seems like, from what I gathered, even if I ran this on my Mac Studio, it would take about 1 to 2 weeks to do the training. But if I just rent an H100 for a day, it's like $800 to do the entire, splitting of this training. And then, the I could use DeepSeek on the H100 to do the teaching, to break out the stuff. So it's a pretty cool kind of way. And I haven't documented this, so this is kind of my first. Well, I have, but I haven't like wrote an article, like a paper, a ARXIV paper or anything like that. So I'm kind of you all that are on listening to this and watching the stream, you're the first ones to kind of get the idea and where we're going with this kind of stuff. And again, on the bleeding edge, I don't think anybody else is doing this. I've looked, and there's a few papers that have been kind of hinting at something like that. But LoRa, LoRa, that is out there, kind of helps facilitate this. And I don't know a lot about LoRa yet, and so I'm going to be doing some reading on that to figure out. And I'll pass that to you, Brent, because I just did this like 2 days ago. Figured out that how we can make our chat LLM be really hyper efficient and really good, and truthful about things, not hallucinate by doing this.
Okay, the only thing I got to say here is that it seems like we were supposed to have like a TM trademark, some kind of watermark over your face for everything you were saying for the last couple minutes.
It's
But
going to be open source. I'm not going to patent it probably, so I think we're good. It just goes to our ecosystem and driving revenue to our ecosystem in a very efficient way. And I'm all about trying to make this happen. Do apps in 3 weeks, which I've done apps in 3 weeks lots of times before. And now with programming with AI doing 90% of the work with the UI stuff, it's much easier. And we did the other 90%. We did 90% of the other 10%. With our SDK. So really, it's gluing stuff together and making sure everything works correctly, which could take as little as 3 days. I've built products in 6 hours actually, with AI, and I think I'm giving myself 3 weeks, which was my typical time when I was doing everything manually, like when I wrote the what do you call that? The transpiler for Open Zeppelin and the EIP 2535 stuff, to use a transpiler to make those smart contract libraries. It took me 3 weeks by myself to do that because I'm just that fast, right? But if I had today, I would guess if I had AI back then, this is like 3 years ago maybe 4 years ago that I did this. If I used AI today, I would guess that would take me less than 3 days and probably more like a day and a half to do, just because most of that was trying to, okay, what's going on over here? Okay, I need to change that, looking through the code, kind of analyzing it. And AI is really good at that. You could just type it in and say, okay, given this file, tell me what's going on here really quick, or given these set of files, instead of me going and reading them, it reads them instantly and then gives you kind of a summary of what's going on. And a lot of times when you're engineering stuff and you're working with new code or trying to modify code, 90% of your time is like, okay, what the hell's going on internally, right? And so this is where AI has sped me up quite a bit, because I have an idea of what I want to do and how to do it, but I have to integrate with other people's code. And if I don't know what their thinking process is, I have to go read the code and kind of like, okay, this is this and that is that. And that takes a lot because you have to keep a lot of stuff in your head to do that, which I'm really good at. But in general, AI sped that up, thousands fold for me to just type in, here's the code, tell me what's where, and everything, instead of me going and reading. And I'm not the fastest reader anyway, right? I'm like scanning, okay, this is this, okay, just like if you're reading a book, imagine comparison of you reading a book and then giving a summary, where AI can just get the whole book and in microseconds give you a summary, compared to you reading a book that could take you 3 or 4 days. That's what's going on, and that's what I love about AI. It's just giving me quicker summaries or quicker information. Even like if you're using an API, like if you have some new API that you want to call, you have to go read the freaking documentation, right? And you're like, okay, I need this parameter and I need this. Okay, it's hooked up to this function and I really want to go to this function. You have to sort it all out. Whereas with AI, you can say, hey, go read this document. I'm trying to do this. Tell me which API I need to call. Or, and then spit it out the documentation for that API, right? Instead of me going through the code and finding it. And so this is where AI really shines in programming. And then typing out, right? It's kind of my own editor. When instead of me going, okay, now I know what I want to do, I sit there and go, here, write this function in this kind of style, and I want these parameters in there. And instead of me typing it out, I have to do one sentence instead of 50 lines of code. One sentence, and it goes and it formats it correctly and everything like that. And then I just cut and paste it into an IDE. And so that's not vibe coding, and that's one of the reasons I hate the word vibe coding. This is like leveraging AI with a real engineer, because you have to watch the code, because it'll make mistakes, right? It's like, no, 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 I didn't mean that. Here's a better way to do that. Go call this function instead of what you put out there, and use my style and use my third party libraries that I want to use, instead of like saying, oh, install this new library to do this. It's like, no, we're already doing that over here in this library. So call that instead, because we already have that functionality done. So you don't need to tell us to go find another library and install it or write the code for that particular library. It's already done, in our third party libraries. So, sorry, I'm kind of getting off on a tangent there, but it's just, I know you have some stuff and you're kind of calling what you're doing vibe coding, and it's like
Me?
nails chalkboard on nails on a chalkboard when somebody says they're vibe coding.
Oh, well, I don't vibe code. I don't
Yeah,
vibe code, and I think I'm in exactly the same mindset that you have. I think vibe coding kind of belongs in a category where you don't necessarily have significant software engineering skills,
yeah,
not architectural, etc. So you really just need to trust that whatever you get is whatever you get,
yeah,
and that's great if whatever you're doing is something, I would say, very small scale. Meanwhile, like you can, I'm noticing that the tools for those of us who have quite a bit of depth and breadth of software engineering has enabled the scale of what can be generated to be larger and larger and larger. So I'm very impressed with that. And also, like you, I think one of the things I dread the most about approaching something, like, okay, I'm going to start something, I'm going to break ground, is just those initial steps of, oh gosh, I have to read how much of this code before I can I just have two questions. And if I just have the answer to these two questions, I can really get going. And it's like, okay, 4 hours later, if I'm reading everything and it's a lot of code, I finally find what I'm after. Whereas with the AI, I just ask a series of questions, find in the code the following capabilities, entry points, etc. And it just comes back, goes, here you go. And I'm like, okay, rock and roll. So yeah, I think we're having very much the same experience.
yeah, yeah. It's cool. I guess maybe we should talk about, well, the effects on us has been great internally, especially with us writing tests for security reasons and stuff like that, because it can help write the unit test. You can tell it, hey, here's what we got, write us the unit tests, and then we're thinking, instead of writing them and taking all that time, we're thinking about, okay, how can we be exploited, or what are the corner cases that are going to happen with this? And so it's elevated my speed at which I can concentrate on the corner cases where we might be exploited or there can be some security hole. in our code. It's like we're kind of using AI, and with us thinking about it too, is like, AI a lot of times will say something to me and give me this long list, and I'm like, well, that's 99%, but wait a minute, what about this? And it's like, oh, you're right, and it's like, okay, why didn't you think about that at first? It gets 99% of it from the web, but then it doesn't have the human ability to connect the dots or the intuition to kind of think outside, what has happened currently, or what's the 99% of the corner cases. It doesn't, it can't reason for some reason about new corner cases, which I think requires intuition. And so that's what's kind of cool about why I feel we'll never be replaced by AI unless it gets quantum things. So interesting. Oh, lost your audio there, Brent.
Yep. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Had an interruption.
Yeah, no problem. Um, yeah, we can edit that out. No, we don't need to edit it out. You went like when you went like that, it just put a big B on there. So cool. But yeah, it's helped a lot, and I know that we're taking time on, this beta, but in general, people can ask me, when mainnet all day long, but until, they step up to the plate and start funding it, like I have solely been funding all of this development over the last year, you know, once they can say, then they can start asking me questions when mainnet, right? I'm not going to spend all this money and launch a product that's just going to fail or die, and this product is not going anywhere. So I am, in this for the long haul, no matter what happens. This is my end of career kind of passion project. Yes, it's going to make money, but I'm not really focusing on that because I want this project to last, 20, 50 years so that we build this whole new ecosystem for the world that, can disrupt every kind of industry and make a new way of us living. And just briefly, and we can kind of change the subject a little bit, is that the um, the AI jobs, the AI taking away jobs, is kind of bullshit. Kind of bullshit. It is bullshit. What they're doing, and this has kind of been researched and more than likely true, is they're cutting jobs that, and then trying to use that savings to buy AI that will replace those jobs, right? And so AI is kind of a, a factor in the replacement, but our systems actually make it better because now you, I don't know if people remember this, but I was always talking about, what's going to happen in the future with AI is that everybody's going to buy a robot and then they're just going to do the work and you're going to get paid through the robot, right? And so you can just go off and do what you want, paint or fish, or, if you want to get involved and talk to the robot and help out, you can do that. But it's no more, the repetitive tasks kind of go away. And so I just kind of had an epiphany just probably just now that that's exactly what genius is. It's like, but the robot's your phone or your home computer, right? And so we're kind of going that direction. And so I don't really believe that, well, I think, I don't think AI is going to replace you necessarily unless you want it to, which I do want it to. I would love to have AI doing all its stuff and getting paid out, and then I can just go make video games, right? And not have to worry about how to monetize it. And so instead of AI replacing you, I think what AI is doing is replacing your income, where your income stream comes from, right? Instead of you trading your time for income, you're letting your robot do it, or you're letting your home computer do it for you. And then you can do whatever you want. I mean, if you want to make video games, nothing's stopping you. I mean, AI can make video games, but, you know, why not just let the human do it because it's fun and it's artistic, and that's something AI really doesn't have. I mean, um, you can not integrate, but you can collaborate with AI to make a game, but you have to be the person that designs it and says, what's fun and things like that. Of course, AI may eventually figure out and, oh, what makes it fun for humans, and I can generate a game for you. But right now, it just generates these crappy movies that, are kind of interactive on the fly and stuff like that, which I don't know. To me, that's not that fun anyway. But these worlds, and they had a vote last night at this founders and funders event about did people what do people, if they knew a movie was completely AI generated, would they go and watch it? And like one person out of 100 raised their hand, and then said, "Well, what if a human did it, but it was using AI to kind of help out and stuff?" And then everybody raised their hand and said, "Yeah, I'd watch that because it's kind of has the human element to it, where the other completely AI generated movies at this point just look like they're AI generated and they have no soul to them." But anyway, I digress. Just kind of some interesting stuff to talk about. Maybe we should kind of, I don't know, have we talked enough about genius and what's going on? I mean, this is kind of an interesting podcast because we're being very we're all over the place, or I am anyway.
Okay, a bit of a caboose on what you're saying there, because I just feel like I got to bring this out. Is that so much of human history has been, or just the history of the planet has been the hormetic stress that comes and causes a given species to have to kind of go one or two directions. Either that species has to go away, or it has to develop, adapt, expand, etc. And I look at what's going on in our culture right now, not just at the level of technology, which is what we're kind of canvassing, but even if we include things like political, etc. There's certainly no shortage of hormetic stress happening right now. And to focus again on the AI, I do think it's really quite interesting because, Ken, the way you've just articulated this, it kind of points to the human creativity, which has been there, it's been present, it's been part of what has produced the magnificent pieces of architecture and art, et cetera, and music that we've had over the centuries. But it's almost like the AI gives us an opportunity, if we can get past the fear of what it could represent, to be in a place of even greater creativity, where even more people can get their creativity tapped into. It's almost like the AI is the infrastructure for a creativity OS, almost at a spiritual level. Now, all of us are realizing that to move forward, we have to, that creativity we may have been suppressing. No, it's time to actually pull it out. It's time for everyone to take advantage of creativity. So that's my take on looking at this in a very positive way. So, and well, we should, because we're going to be providing that infrastructure. So.
Yeah, and if you're doing mundane tasks, mundane repetitive tasks, you're not being creative, right? And so if you get rid of those mundane repetitive tasks that AI is good at, you have time to be more creative, right? And do things. And I think that bothers some people. I know a few people that bothers because they love the mundane repetitive tasks that gives them purpose, right? And it's like, well, I'm sorry, but that's great for you, but you're going to have to think differently, or you're just going to have a robot that does your repetitive mundane tasks, and then you're going to have to find something to do with yourself, right? I mean, maybe instead of doing accounting every day in and out, and going to work and then going home and watching TV, now instead what you do is you go out and you garden and you do the mundane task of gardening, if that's what you like. I guess that's kind of creative for some people, but for me that's very mundane, repetitive task gardening stuff. But you're just going to have to switch what mundane tasks you can do or you want to do, and then there's not going to be probably a monetization associated with it. There could be, though. Like, I mean, gardening, you could grow vegetables and sell them for food, and robots don't need food, so you'd sell them to humans. So it's just an addition to your monetization, but you're going to have to realize that your income or how much money you make is going to be shifted towards AI and what the current state is. And there's going to be additional monetization on top of that. And this is kind of proven, or not proven, but a theory that is about to be proven in the Philippines, right? Because right now they don't have Genius installed on their set-top boxes. But when we launch and we put it on the 200,000 boxes, those guys make about $100 a month, right? And eventually Genius will double that. And so just because they have a device, they'll still make that $100 a month by selling their crafts and their food and everything else that they're doing over there. But now they'll have an additional stream of income on top of that. And it kind of levels the playing field and democratizes the playing field across the globe for the Genius AI system, you know, expecting that, in the US, everybody's going to have, Optimus robots in their house. It does their dishes and cooks and cleans for them instead of that. But we kind of democratize and level the playing field in that you don't need to buy, and those things are $5,000. And I heard somebody last night say, imagine what's going to happen in a few years that everybody's going to own a $5,000 robot, and all of a sudden these lights beep beep, warning warning. I'm like, yeah, great. The people in the Philippines that make $100 a month are really going to be able to afford a $5,000 Optimus robot. Yeah, yeah, good thinking there, guy. And it's very, these guys are thinking in such these small bubble ways of like America or the UK, where we can afford a $5,000 robot, and it's like, what about the rest of the world? Right? It's like they can't afford that stuff. And so they're just going to be poorer and poorer and not be able to make money because we use $5,000 robots and we take the money from them, and it just, gets distributed to, the first world countries and the first world companies, and adds more money to them. Yeah, no. Ours is like completely decentralized to help smooth that out. And so you don't need a robot. You just have your little set top box instead. Now, he wouldn't be able to do the dishes and things like that. But guess what? If you, doubled your income after a while, you build up to the $5,000 and then you can buy a robot. And so, just a little bit different thinking. It amazes me that when people are talking about things, they're so focused on Western, earnings and Western culture, and they're not thinking, globally about this stuff. It's just like me, us, people that don't really need the $5,000 robot. They're just freaking lazy. I do the dishes all the time at home, right? And I cook all the time at home. But yeah, it'd be great to have a robot so I could do other things, but it's not a necessity. It's more of a, yeah, it could free up some little bit of time for me. Would I like it? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, cooking's kind of fun sometimes. So, anyway, that's, boy,
Well,
we're getting off on all kinds of different topics, aren't we?
and perhaps we could have a little for those little Pi set-top boxes. We could have a hardware shield. You install it, and now it's a transformer. It becomes your robot and does your dishes.
There you go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, yeah. Put some mechanics around it and just say, "Oh, you just plug this in over the USB port into the brain of the robot, and then boom, there it is, and then it's running around, with Wi-Fi connection and the little set-top box on there, and then." Maybe you have to buy another one to, do streaming video, or it could actually probably take the brain. It's a little Raspberry Pi brain now, and stream to your TV automatically. What do they call that? Cast to your TV, right? Whatever. It's funny. All right,
I'm
so
getting concerned.
we have about 10 minutes, I think, so we should probably kind of look and see if there's any questions in there. Uh, let's see here. All right, in the chat, Paul, if you want to post any questions in there, if you click on the question and hit show, it should show up. I will, if you've curated. All right. Not being replaced by AI, huh? What would you suggest to 60,000 people laid off by Amazon, a company that hardly pays taxes yet, receive cuts and subsidies due to pay bills in the coming time? Well, so that is not because of AI, like I said. And so you're kind of targeting the wrong thing. They laid off 60,000 people, according to some analysis, because they wanted to buy more GPUs to build the AI. And so is it my responsibility to figure out what those 60,000 people are going to do? And no, I mean, I can't help them. I mean, maybe install Genius AI. I mean, that's what I can do to help. But I have no control over Amazon. And yeah, I know they hardly pay taxes. But in general, it's not, you know, yeah, it's a short term problem, and I feel for those people for sure. But in general, a lot of the jobs, like they laid off a lot of um, what do you call that? The customer service representatives, because that side of stuff has always, for the last 10 years, has been worked on to use AI to basically answer the low level questions. And I don't know what to do about 60,000 people. It's not my responsibility to make them whole. But I'm doing what I can so that they can, maybe make some money off of Genius AI, and that should help them. But for me personally, I don't know how to solve that, and it is related to AI, but I don't think it is um, a good thing of how they're doing it. Like they laid off. I'll give one more example. Microsoft laid off a bunch of junior level engineers because the senior level engineers can use AI to basically speed themselves up, and they don't need a lot of junior level engineers. Well, my take on that is they're dumb for doing that because one, the senior level engineers are making the money, of course, and they're going to retire soon. Then what you're going to have a lack of is experts that can help drive AI, because AI is not infallible. And so they make a lot of mistakes. And if you don't have the expertise to understand what mistakes they're making, then you have a problem. And also, those customer service jobs, there is a lot of jobs now that are coming about that are labeling AI. You have to have humans in the loop still. And so they are just going to have to shift what they're doing from customer service or, um, getting your degree in computer science to working inside the AI industry, because that's the genie's out of the bottle. So you need to kind of morph. It's like, I mean, I don't know how many times I've been laid off, and I worked it out. It's like my job became, well, my age became a problem at times. And so, humans survive, but you need to morph and shift. And if you don't, then you're just going to wallow in self-pity and stuff like that. So it's their responsibility to figure out, with how things are changing and how the atmosphere is changing, where they can fit in. And there's a famous saying from electronic arts that I like to live by: mutate or die. And it's like, hey, that's the things of what AI is. You can't blame AI, can't blame the companies. You just have to mutate for yourself. You have to take responsibility for your own thing. It's not my responsibility to keep you employed and keep you employed in some job. You need to do it yourself, and you need to be self-sustaining. I can't help 60,000 people,
I want to
right?
chase what you're saying, Ken, by pointing out that no matter how much we could point to AI and say, well, I believe this is an example of people losing their jobs because of AI, or this example or that example, the reality is, particularly in the technological sphere we're in, and no less the industrial revolution of the past, that we've been watching for 100, 200 years, nothing but disruptions that long before AI that have been putting people out of work, putting
Yeah.
people out of work, putting people out of work. So, I mean, we don't want to
Railroad,
linger.
cars, steam engine, you name it.
And so, really, my perspective on this is that because those disruptions are not going to stop, about the only thing that you can control is your reaction to it. And you're either choosing to be extraordinarily bitter about it, or you choose to say, hey, I'm going to look at this as being an opportunity, almost a blessing, a challenge for me to, as Ken says, mutate and grow. So the attitude is what is. This is what I was saying about, hormetic stress being an occasion for expansion. Right now, humanity is at a threshold where the knock of all of this change is indicating, in my view, that call for that raising of consciousness, which includes shifting out of that bitterness and into a place of, okay, I'm grateful for these challenges. This is going to make me a better person. If I just simply accept that this is the new reality, how do I step into it? Which is a whole, I mean, that could be a podcast by itself,
Yeah,
but
that could be a podcast by itself. All right, next question. Hello, team. Has the whole inflow and outflow of payments and fiat to customers been set up? Um, the inflow has, we're using Banksa, and that is all set up, and we're just about to flip the switch for production mode on that in the wallet, so that you can actually buy crypto and buy Genius in order to do the AI processing. The outflow of payments has been set up, but the last part of that is that we're like we said, it's the security, and we're gaining the outflow of that, so that in case there's some exploit or something like that, we can flip a pause button automatically and go figure out what's going on, so that we don't have an exploit where we wake up the next day and they've drained things from us. And so that's all um, pretty much in place, but we're writing some tests to make sure on the testnet phase 3.5 that we can fully test that. And so once that 3.5 passes, and that's what I'm talking about, is the inflow and outflow um, bridges will happen. There probably will not be a direct bridge between like Ethereum and Polygon, that you can use directly at this point. And I don't know that there ever will be, but we might do it because of the security holes in the Axler network for doing those type of bridges. So what will have to happen is you'll have to go into Genius to do it, into the Super Genius wallet, and then extract it out of Polygon. You won't be able to use like Squid Router online to do it, because we have some protection mechanisms that are not built into Axler that verify that whoever the owner was may want two-factor authentication before he sends that transaction to, you know, instead of some exploiter doing it. And so that is not built into the EVM networks yet. And we could work with all those people, but instead we're just basically making a bridge down to or across to Super Genius, acting as the mediator between the different chains, so that we can make sure there's two-factor authentication in there, and there's some reasonable levers or triggers in there to make sure that we're not being exploited. And this is all my being overcautious after the Axler exploit that we had last year. I'm just being super, super cautious to make sure that, if we see anything, there's a automatic kill switch or pause switch, so that we can go in there and undo what happened, if anything happens, so at all. So that's kind of an answer to that. I appreciate that, Mark. We have a next question. Installed, yeah, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, earn money while your robot does your dishes. That's awesome. That's not a question, but yes. Well, I mean, Elon did say something kind of curious, on X about hooking up all the Teslas, together
Yeah.
to make a basically genius, which and he said, I think this can be done. And I'm like, dude, we're already doing it, come talk to us. No response from him. Maybe Mario Knopfel can reach out to him and say, dude, you should answer this guy. Look what he's talking about. He's like answered you 6 different times and you're just like ignoring it. And it's like, fine. But if it's a Tesla robot, it's probably very possible because they're probably using the same chipset. So cool question. Got another one up there. There we go. Will you do customer support with AI or humans? I would say here's what's happening, and probably going to be doing the same thing. We'll do the base level kind of, if you ask a question that's been answered 100 times before, we'll probably do the AI system, and then there'll be a second layer, which is probably humans, right? That are, and this is just because, I know people a lot of times want to talk to a human, and I do a lot of times, because like when I go to Bank of America, they don't use AI necessarily, or they try to use AI, but it's really bad AI. It's not like a chat thing. It's more like, oh, we have this list of facts. I will just match your question with a list of facts and give out this generic answer. It has no reasoning skills. And so if we do AI customer support, it'll be with reasoning skills. And then there'll be a second level. It's like I said, humans will most likely always be in the loop. And so instead of being that low level customer support person, you're going to have to work a lot less, or you're going to work more efficiently by being an AI human that, will answer, instead of you spending an hour on the phone with one customer, you will spend like 5 minutes per customer that escalates to you. And so that's where customer support is going. And I was at a talk last night on that founders and funders thing, where Salesforce is doing this. And Salesforce just laid off 4,000 people. And guess what they did? They laid off 4,000 customer service people because of AI, of course. But they still need that human in the loop. And he told me in his presentation, he said last night, all those customer service, though, he said now can just go over to labeling the AI, because the AI that's doing their job will, make mistakes, right? Because it's not perfect. But what they do is the humans in the loop there, and they can basically help refine that until it gets perfect, and then they can graduate to a better job, which means they don't have to worry about the stress of, some customer calling them up and yelling and screaming and using the F word and F bombs on them. They can let AI handle that. And then once that customer wants to get to a human, and it doesn't get their question answered, it can instantly transfer you. And that human has a lot more time, because the AI is kind of helping him um, uh, shrink down the question until, to a point where he can answer it using human reasoning. So I think customer support is becoming a blend of that stuff, and so I don't think it's a bad thing personally. All right, cool. We're at time 10:32. All right, everybody. I appreciate it. This is a great AMA. I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe if anybody wants to, if we have one next week or maybe the week after, if anybody wants to make some suggestions on what we could talk about, I love doing this stuff. But if you have more questions, kind of about AI or what's going on, I kind of wanted this to shift more into this kind of discussion anyway, Brent, because once we're launched, we're not going to be going, oh, we're working on this and the timeline's this, or, it's mainly going to be like, hey, we got this new project, this new game's coming out, and here's, why it's cool. And yeah, it's using Genius in the background, and it has 1 million users, and it's making this amount of money. That's what we're going to be starting to talk about, and no
So
longer.
speaking of creativity,
Yeah.
that means we get much more of that discussion.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, everybody. I appreciate the time. Brent, you want to say your
Yeah.
final goodbyes?
So everyone, thanks for joining us on yet another installment. Ken, thank you for your time and diligence answering questions. Everyone loves to get a peek into what's going on in your world. So with that, I will thank everyone. Thank you, Ken, and we'll follow up with you folks next time.
Sounds good. Goodbye, everyone.